So we are revising notes of grid, and these notes I have made from cssgridgarden.com, this site, and here we go. So this is a tip that we can enable this tool tool thing from Chrome. Also it's there in Firefox, but it's good that it is there in. And then if we enable this grid, then we can see these lines, and these lines are most of what we really want all the time to help our grid things. So let's start from here. Node starts from here. There is no zeroth line, but there is first and -1 line. As we can see here as well, there is no zeroth line, but leftmost is the 1 and rightmost is the -1, this one. And same goes for horizontal. And this is column 1, column 2, column 3, row 1, row 2, row 3. It's same as Microsoft Excel. Next point is in CSS grid, rows and columns are same as MX Excel grid. Grid template rows defines our row height. It is a grid row is a horizontal track in a CSS layout. It is the space between two horizontal lines. So yeah, it can be represented via shorthand, grid, or grid template as well, as you will see it in future. Grid template columns, on the other hand, it is the space between two vertical lines, as we discussed. This is a column, so we define the space between these, like how many columns should be there, as we'll see very soon, in how many columns and how much space each should have, and how many with grid template rows, how we define how many rows and how much space each row should have. So this is about grid. We are going to see what grid is in the end of this tutorial. So that is also really nice. Okay, maybe we should just put that property at the end of this document here. Actually, it suits much here. Let's go back to the top. So this is our grid container. So we assign display grid, and we give the columns, number of columns. Here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and each have 20% of width as of the container. That is great. And same for the rows. We have 5 rows, and each has a width of 20%. Very simple. Next, we apply these properties to grid children, and like for each children we can assign it the column start and column end thing, and that is very helpful to align to put a particular child at a particular place we want it to be. Next is this is a very interesting selector from CSS, that we can simply select the nth child of this class, and we can assign this is very useful to put the position same as this. Although this is useful when we have like all children have the same class dot child as the same class, then we can use the selector to target a particular child. When pairing grid column start and grid column end, you might assume that the end value has to be greater than the start, but it turns out not to be the case. For example, below code works such as the third child spans second to fourth column. So yeah, in here, like we can see that the values are little out, I mean that the start value is higher and the end value is lower. So the simple thing you need to remember in this case is, if the case is like this, these values just work as if they were reversed. So this is the tip. I think I should just close this. Now if you want to count grid lines, I think maybe I should put some syntax highlight here. Next is, if you want to count grid lines from the right instead of right, you can give the negative values. For example, -1 to specify the first grid line. This we already discussed in the start. Next we have this grid column start. This is to, have we discussed this already? We need to make sure the line you specified is below. This will tell you start towards next year. Okay, here I am specifying that if only one is specified, then the grid column end is takes the value as of the next value. For example, -2 here. So yeah, this is what this example use case tells us. Next, this one, level 7. Instead of defining grid item based on the start and end position of the grid lines, you can define it based on the desired column width using span keyword. Keep in mind that the span only works with positive values. So this is interesting, that we can simply instead of specifying the line number here, we can simply give span 1, span 2, so it takes that many columns for that particular side. So I also specified this is to occupy a total of 2 grids. Hint above will make it occupy grids between line 2 and 4. Very easy. Let's go further. So level 9. Below works magically as you think it would. So this also works very easy. I mean, whatever the grid column start it has, starting from there, it simply spans 3 more boxes. Typically both grid column start and grid column end gets very tiring. Fortunately, grid column end is a shorthand property that can accept. So this is a shorthand for grid column start and grid column end. Very easy. Next, this is helpful if you want to make particular child span whole of the row, that is all the columns. So it is useful in that case. Next is level 12. One of the things that sets CSS grid apart from Flexbox is that you can easily position items in 2 dimensions, column and rows. Grid row start. Okay, so here we are defining grid column start. It works like same as grid column start, but in row way. So also it also has grid column end as grid row end as well, and this is shorthand for these two. Very easy. So we can use both grid column start and grid column end, and this is how it looks like in that way. Let's go to level 15. If typing out both grid column and grid row is too much, there's get another shorthand, grid area. So grid area is very amazing. It is shorthand for all these grid column start, grid column end, grid row start, grid row end, and very easy. And we can make a particular child to be aligned at the desired place we want it to be. So how about multiple type? This is an acronym actually, RCRC, that you can remember: row start, column start, row end, column end. How about multiple items? You can definitely we can make items overlap each other and it looks something like that. Maybe I should just close it. Okay, going to level 18. If grid items aren't explicitly placed with grid area, grid column, grid row, then they are automatically placed according to their order in the markup. We can override this using the order property, which is one of the advantages of grid over table-based layout. By default, all grid items have order 0, but this can be set to any positive or negative value similar to Z index. Very easy. Let all grid items have order 0, but we can assign it positive or negative value, and order can be negative. So let's go to level 21, repeat function. Here I want to mention that the order is in ascending order, that is negative value comes at the start, and the more positive the value is, it goes to the end. Or I can just update that information here after I have confirmed it from the documentation, MDN or W3 School. So in level 21 we can have a repeat function that we can specify it like that, and it works like these values. So very interesting. CSS grid support multiple different units at the same time, and this is very interesting. Particularly this thing, this represent multiple units at the same time. So going to level 23, grid also introduces a new unit, the fractional unit. Each fraction unit allocates one share of the available space. If two elements are set to 1 FR, 3 FR, then the space is divided into 4 equal shares, and the first element occupies 1 by 4 and the second element 3 by 4 of the leftover space. It is simply the ratio. So that's how it works. Let's go next. Level 24. When columns are set with auto pixel percentage, then any other columns set with FR will divide the space that's left over. We use grid template columns. We use grid template columns to set these columns of width 50 pixel on the sides, and use FR to mark 3 most columns that take up the remaining space by dividing equally among them. So this says that these divide the leftover space equally among these three after 100 pixel, I mean 50 pixel plus 50 pixel, after removing this total 100 pixel from the available space in the grid. Okay, these are again grid columns, start grid column and grid columns, those 4 values, grid row and grid columns, and the start and end. So this is another example where we use this mix of values, pixel and FR, and FR units are again these take value after the static value is removed from the available space from the container in this column. So this is yet another example. What do we do here? We define auto here and 1FR. So these 3 elements take all the take the space as much as they want to. And then F1 FR is assigned to means that all the leftover space is assigned to this third uh, child. So let's go to level 26. Grid template rows works much same as the grid template columns. So these properties, I think we did discuss it all the way at the top, but we are again putting it here. We use grid template rows to water all but the top 50 pixels of your garden. Note that the water is set to fill up the fifth row, so you need to create 5 rows in total. Will make 5 rows. This is exercise actually very interesting, and we make 5 rows in total, and the top 4 rows are 12.5 pixels, so they take a total of 50 pixels, and we give left all the space to this last row. This is very interesting. This is the next topic is grid template area. And grid template area, we can simply use these textual values, and we need to define all these textual values to each child, obviously, by using this pattern grid area, and then we can use grid template areas. Very easy. And also we can then define their the height and width of each row column using this pattern grid template that we are simply used to already. Obviously now we don't need to use grid template, these static values, grid column start, grid column, and grid row start or grid row end. This is the helpful thing of this grid area when used with grid template areas altogether. Let's go to level 27. Grid template is a shorthand property for grid template row and grid template columns. Okay, this is also very interesting that since grid template row was a shorthand for grid template, actually no, sorry. So grid template row and grid template columns, we define the rows and their widths, heights, and same goes with the columns. We define the number of rows with the head width, height. I mean for row it is the height of each row, and for column it is the width of each column. So we have a grid template as a shorthand. So using this we can specify grid template rows and columns in the same line. So first is the row, second is the column. There is yet another example here. Grid template, this is again very simple, that first is for row, second is after slash we have it is for column. So next is grid template. Grid template is a shorthand property for I mean in this example we are using it as a shorthand for these three. The last example was using it for grid template rows and columns. Now we have grid template area. This supports different syntaxes. So in this example grid template area is also there, and obviously then we have all the children defining their areas as A, B, B or CC, whatever it is. So here I mentioned above is shorthand for grid template area. This is so here it expands to these values. So very interesting.